His Majesty the King, King Charles, is truly honouring his late mother's wishes with this particular request. One, of course, that broke many people's heart at the late monarch's funeral. In fact, the very final and most haunting of images. As ever, let me explain. Hi, good morning, Neil Sean here in the very heart of London. Thank you for joining me today. This particular story, when you think about it, we have so many royal traditions, many that a lot of people don't understand, of course, around the world. The changing of the guard, the fact that when royal babies are born, we put a plaque in front of the forecourt in, of course, Buckingham Palace, to announce the birth. This is what they did for centuries, and these are traditions. People love them, don't they? I don't know about you, I love them, I think it's fabulous when they bring out the easel and they put the official announcement up. Even things like, whether sovereign's in or out, that by the flag flying outside Buckingham Palace. And it's the quip of many people, isn't it? You used to look up and say, oh, the Queen's in, I'll pop in for a cup of tea. Of course, there are bigger, more traditional traditions that our wonderful late monarch wished to see continued even after her sad demise. And here is one of them. This really all centres upon the fact that every single morning at 9 a.m. every morning during her reign, she was awoken by the sound of the bagpipes. That's right. This was a tradition stated way back in the reign of Queen Victoria that she wished to continue even after, sadly, she passed away. Now, it's nice to know that His Majesty the King, King Charles, up in Balmoral, has decided that he is going to continue this wonderful tradition. And as ever, let me explain. King Charles has indeed honoured the Queen's piper after his recent performance at her state funeral. Charles gave the late Queen's official bagpipe player, Piper Major Paul Burns, a special new role after he played at her funeral last month. The musician will now be the official piper for His Majesty the King, and he carried out his very first official performance last Tuesday in Balmoral at the King's residence in Berkeley House. Now, every morning, in keeping with the tradition that the late monarch enjoyed, Paul will play for 15 minutes underneath the window of His Majesty's residence. Now, this really still applies whether the King is based in Balmoral, Buckingham Palace, Holyrood House, or indeed Windsor Castle. Paul was lucky enough to be the 17th piper to our late Queen. Basically, he concluded his duties to her with, as we now know, that wonderful heartbreaking rendition of Sleep, Dearie Sleep, a particular favourite of hers during her funeral at Westminster Abbey. The Queen absolutely adored the sound of the bagpipes, but this was really passed on to her by another long-reigning Queen. That's right, the position was originally created by Queen Victoria in 1843 after she discovered a fellow Marquis had his own piper. I thought this was a marvellous idea. After all, she'd fallen in love with Balmoral. In her letter to her mother about the position, Queen Victoria wrote, "We have heard nothing but bagpipes since we've arrived here in the beautiful Highlands, and I've become so fond of it that I also mean to have a piper, who can, if you like, pipe every night out at Frogmore." And indeed, that piper did, a tradition, of course, that the late Queen also took to task. Now, as we know, the bagpipes are not simply everyone's cup of tea, but the late Queen Mother, along with, of course, our late monarch, Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, absolutely adored the sound. Now, does His Majesty the King truly enjoy the sound of the bagpipes, or is he simply keeping tradition afoot? According to a very good source, yes, he does, We're not quite sure about the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine. We do know, of course, that William's late mother was not too much of a fan of being woken up by the Queen's piper every day while she was in residence with Her Majesty the Queen. As we often say here on the show, obviously it's all about musical tastes. But isn't it wonderful that King Charles is carrying on with this brilliant tradition? I know a lot of people around the world may see and think that it's rather strange, but also so many other people think, what a great and fabulous tradition to carry forward into the 21st century and hopefully beyond. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.